Redbourn. How I love to say that. I'm Symon Vegro, and I welcome you all to another Active in Redbourn weekly call. As always, thank you to all the generous people, including the Parish Council, who have donated to keep these calls free of charge for our listeners over the last few months. As ever, our clever technical team behind the scenes is making this available live on the Redbourners Facebook page, hopefully, and afterwards it will be both there and on our website. And as in previous weeks, everyone bar today's speakers will be on mute any minute now, so I've just actually forgotten to do it, so I'll do that any minute now. So you can make as much noise as you like. So let me just do a line. So now the dogs can bark, you can put the kettle on, and it won't interfere with anything. Now, our wonderful guests today, excuse me, are Sarah Hinchliffe, head teacher at Redbourn Primary School, Kate Bretherton, who waited patiently on last week's call until we ran out of time, and Alviar Cohen with a very, very heartwarming story, which we'll cover at the end. We'll give this away this week, so we've jigged the format around a bit to time with Sarah's school commitments, and she'll be starting this week's call with her thought for the week. So good morning to you all, and you're first up, Sarah. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good. We really appreciate you coming on because you must be incredibly busy up there at the school. Just before you give us your thought for the week, how are things going at the school? Is it all going okay, or are you sort of manic, or how are things?
No, so far so good. All the systems that we put in place seem to work really well. Lots of positive feedback from parents that it's working for them. And so far, touch wood, don't like to say it, we've managed to keep everything open. So no positive cases among children or anything at the moment. So fingers crossed that continues.
Oh, super. Well done. I know you did a lot of great work, you and the team behind the scenes, to make it that way. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so you're going to give us a lovely thought for the week. So the floor is yours, and we really look forward to hearing I think you're talking about connection or something. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Okay, so the floor is yours. We all look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to do the thought for the day. Big shoes to step into, the Reverend Will, who normally does that, so I hope I meet up to high standards. So I want to talk about connection, because I think we're facing a winter of COVID. It's going to be with us for quite a long time. We're facing further possible lockdowns, and I think it would be even more important that people don't feel isolated over the winter. In some ways, perhaps it was easier to go through the first lockdown during the summer months. So I'm going to start by just explaining a little bit about connection by referring to a man called Maslow, who was an American psychologist who was best known for creating a hierarchy of needs. And I'm just going to look at the first three of those needs in relation to our journey through COVID. And as a school, we've been focusing on our journey through COVID at the beginning of this term. So for the first three needs, the first of these that Maslow identified was physiological needs, which are the biological requirements for human survival, like air, food, drink, shelter, clothing, warmth, and sleep. And he considered those to be the most important, as all other needs were secondary until those needs were met. The second level of need he identified were safety needs, and these were things like order, predictability, controlling their lives, and feeling safe and secure. And the third level that he identified was love and belonging, and this is a need for social belonging. If we look back at our journey from March, when we first went into lockdown, I think people did firstly address their physiological needs. There was a lot of panic buying, stocking up on food and toilet rolls and all the things that people felt they needed to survive that period. And then when you think about the safety needs, we did have order in our lives. It was a totally different experience of order, as everyone had to follow the same rules in lockdown. But it was very clear what you could do, and it was very clear what you couldn't do. And schools continued to provide an education, albeit in a different way. And then medical care, which seemed to be almost entirely focused on coronavirus, was there to support the needs that people might have had medically. So there was still some structure and predictability and control in our lives. And when we think about love and belonging, some people did feel isolated. They had to shield. But the community spirit was strong, and there were so many positive stories of how people helped one another. And I'm sure you can all think of lots of local examples as well as examples nationally, like Captain Tom. Families had more time together as people were working from home. And although there was a lot of loss, loss of planned events that people were looking forward to, loss of holidays, loss of weddings, loss of people. There was a feeling that everyone was in this together. And then the rules began to be relaxed, and with the lovely summer weather, people could once again meet up and feel connected. With September came the full reopening of school. And so, you know, we've got lots of different things happening at the moment. But I felt it was really important that when we came back to school, everyone had a voice and an opportunity to share their experiences. Anyone who knows me well knows that I love quotes and collect them, and I include them in my newsletters to parents. Quotes to me seem to appear in life just when you need them, and they say exactly what you're thinking in such a perfect way. I also love an author called Brené Brown who's done a lot of work on vulnerability, and she said this about connection. I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. I felt people needed to be heard at school without judgment and to make connections again with their colleagues. This was really important. We'd all had a lot of time away from one another. School hadn't been in school, it had been a virtual school largely. So we spent time as a staff before children came back, and staff made a collage of items to represent their individual journeys through lockdown, and then they talked it through with a partner. And those who were happy to share it more widely wrote it out. And when I read these, it showed me, and I felt very privileged that people were happy to share it with me, it showed me how different everyone's time had been. For me, not a lot changed really in the summer term. I could still go to work, school was open. I could walk my dog, the weather was perfect. I was lucky enough to have a garden, and eventually I did get to see my family and even managed a holiday in this country. And I'm really grateful for that time and for the time it gave me to reflect on life. But for some, when I read their journeys, the time had been really challenging and really isolating for those who'd been shielding. Since September, some were really happy to come back to work, but others were really anxious about it, especially if they'd been shielding. We're now at the end of September, and although schools operating in a different way, with children remaining in bubbles and one-way systems, things are beginning to feel more normal because everyone's back at school. So we really have to make an effort to maintain social distance and remind ourselves that we need to wear a mask in meetings and not go over a set number in the staff room. It can sometimes seem that it's business as usual. And now, just as we're all getting used to greater freedoms in our lives, like eating out, meeting friends and family, going to swimming pools or gyms, etc., parts of the country are going back into lockdown, and everyone's worrying about Christmas and whether or not they can get together as a family. I think people are feeling confused about what can they do, what can't they do, and it all seems to keep changing on a daily basis. We moan about the current situation, the restrictions made by the government, the things we feel we have lost or missed out on and that we might be going to miss going forward. Daniel Goleman says, self-absorption in all its forms kills empathy, let alone compassion. When we focus on ourselves, our world contracts as our problems and preoccupations loom large. But when we focus on others, our world expands. Our own problems drift to the periphery of the mind and so seem smaller, and we increase our capacity for connection or compassionate action. As a school, we're lucky. We're one big family, and even though we stay in our bubbles, we all see one another every day. We're not isolated. Parents collect and drop off children. They see one another every day to say hello and share their news. They are not totally isolated. So my challenge and my wish for us all is that we can try to focus less on our own problems and think more about how we can help others. We all need to feel connected to others, to our world, to our environment, to life. And at school we're lucky enough to have that. So can you ask yourself, who do you know who doesn't have that in our community? What could you do to make someone feel less alone and isolated as we face further restrictions and as winter approaches? So as a school, I'd like us to offer connection and connect more with the local community. I know we can't do that in person at the moment, but children could write to people who may live alone and isolated. I know how much a real letter or a drawing from a child can mean to someone, and it could be treasured. It could be read many times. I'm sorry, I think someone's talking in the background.
Yeah, sorry, sir. We can still hear you okay, sir. So, yeah.
Okay. So I would really like it if people could identify people who might like a letter from someone. I know a real letter or a drawing from a child can mean so much to people. It could be treasured, it can be read many times, it can be shared and replied to. So if anyone listening knows someone who would like to receive letters from school, please could they let me know? And if anyone has any other wonderful, creative or even slightly wacky ideas how we can connect with people in need, then please contact me also. So I'm going to finish with one final quote from Karen Salmonson, which said, and I put this in my first newsletter of the lockdown, and it is, be the reason someone believes in the goodness of people. So please do get in touch. We really would like to support people, I think, and help people to stay connected. And thank you for having me on Thought for the Day.
Well, Sarah, that was lovely. I'm sorry about the bit of the background noise there, but we would have a little bit of issues with the muting sometimes. But what a wonderful thought for the day. I have to say that Will's got a tough act to follow.
Oh, no.
Well, that's a really, well, first, I mean, very quick, I know you've got to shoot up. I'll just say that for some fantastic quotes in there. I love the fact that you love, and some really good, I particularly like the last one. It reminded me a little bit of a quote I like from Gandhi, I think, who says something like, be the change you wish to see.
Yeah.
Which I really like. Well, anyway, I think you've got to shoot off, haven't you now? You've got so much to do at the school.
I do. But thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
I do mean that, you know, if there are people that we could support, I think the school would get a lot from it as well. The children would learn and gain a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the offer. I really hope people take you up on it. It's a really lovely offer to make. Thank you for coming on the call. Have a good day. Keep up the brilliant work.
Thank you.
And we'll catch up with you soon. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was a really good thought for the week. And now, Kate Bretherton. Kate, sorry that obviously we ran out of time last week. You were sitting waiting patiently on the call for about half an hour, but it was such an interesting call, and we didn't want to cut Jim McManus and Rachel's poetry reading down. So sorry about that.
Oh, no apology required. It was a riveting call last week. I wouldn't have missed any of it.
Yes, it was yours, and Jim in particular I thought was very, very interesting with what he was saying about how we should all behave during the lockdown. Okay, so do you know you were last on the call, by the way, apart from last week's debacle, on the 3rd of June, by the way, which seems incredible, doesn't it, how long ago that was when you talked to us about trees then. So it's great that we've got you back again. Before you take us through Cumberland Gardens, which I think is what you're going to do, I came upon this lovely quote which made me think of you this week. It's from Martin Chuzzlewit by my favourite author, Charles Dickens. On the motionless branches of some trees, autumn berries hung like clusters of coral beads, as in those fabled orchards where the fruits were jewels. What a lovely quote. What a brilliant author he was.
I'm looking out of my window at my neighbour's crab apple tree. And it's just like that because there isn't much breeze and the fruits are hanging ever so still. Lovely.
Lovely, isn't it?
And a lovely rosy red.
Yes, the beautiful autumn colours are coming through now, aren't they?
Well, those are the fruits, actually, rather than the leaves. Okay, so shall I go for it?
Yes, please, Kate, you go for it. We're looking forward to what you've got to say.
My mission in life is to tempt people into looking up. I learned from our own lovely Olive Hickmott that when you look up, it lifts the spirits. So I'm going to try to tempt you to look up next time you walk from the High Street through Cumberland Gardens to where the health centre is, and it leads out, of course, into the Common or Miller's Close. So we're going to start from the High Street and walk through those great big gates, and the very first thing that we see at eye level is some very attractive, light-coloured, textured bark, and it's very thin vertical strips. And if we go up, looking up, we see the leaves and realize that it's a lime tree, L-I-M-E, the lime tree. Now, this has nothing to do with the fruits that we eat. These are Tilia. The genus is Tilia. And the fun about lime trees, and of course the whole avenue across the common is of lime trees, is whether the fun is to look to see whether they are Europa or small-leafed lime. And the way to tell is that the small-leafed lime, which is our original native lime, has arching branches. They arch right out, up and over and out, whereas the Europa branch upwards, more so that you get the whole branching shape of the tree is more like a gherkin. And so as you go in, see the bark, appreciate its texture, and look up to see whether you think it's Europa with its arms up, not so much out wide to welcome we British, a bit since Brexit, going up and being a bit more hesitant, but still tall. Then, the very next tree behind it is one which has a trunk with about the same girth. Now, the way to tell the age of a tree is by its girth. The Woodland Trust have a rule of thumb that the girth of a tree grows about an inch each year. Now, there's obviously variation, but I would say that that first lime and the next tree have about the same girth. But the next tree is a yew tree, Y-E-W, a yew. And unlike the lime tree, which has perfect flowers, it has male and female flowers in the same little tiny pretty yellow petaled flowers. The yew trees not only have separate male and female flowers, but they have them on separate trees. So I'm going to tempt you into looking up at our yew tree to see what sex it is. Is that yew a male or a female? Now, the lime and the yew are, I'm suggesting, about the same age, but which will outlast the other? And I'm sure you know that yews last a very long time. There is a yew in Scotland, the Fortingall yew, which they think was already at least 1,000 years old by the time that Pontius Pilate's father was posted to the north of Britain. And now it's 3 or even maybe 5,000 years old. So that yew tree will definitely outlast the lime. Now, I'm speaking as if there's something about a competition between the two trees for longevity. So, competition, which sex will that yew tree be? Competitive male or a competitive female? Now, this is the time of year when we can tell whether a tree is male or female, because, of course, it's the female that bears the fruit. And the yew fruit is an aril, and it's a bright, vivid red. So look up into the tree and see whether that first competing yew is a male or female. And then we've got another pair of their arms around each other, or perhaps they're both males, perhaps it's a gay couple, male or females, or perhaps it's, but look at the girth of the trunks. They're a bit older than our one at the entrance, but certainly no Darby and Joan. They would be a young couple. So have a look up and see whether you think it's a male and female pair, or a pair of males or a pair of females. And then there is another ewe past them. See whether you think that lone ewe is a male or female. Look up, look for the fruit, the arrows, bright red. So, shall we leave it there, and I'll tell you more about walking through Cumberland Gardens next time, or shall we carry on?
No, I think that's perfect, actually, Kate. Thank you. It's really interesting. I'm actually got to do that walk myself. It's not a long walk, is it? But I've got to go to the chemist later on today, so I shall walk back through those gates and look up and see what I see and see if I can remember what you said.
Good day.
But it is remarkable, isn't it? And the trees are so well, they're so wonderful.
I hope that they'll tempt you to look up and your spirits be lifted.
I'm sure they will. Kate, thank you very much for that. And again, apologies again for overrunning last week. We'll try and get you back again before we wrap up our community calls towards the end of the year and see how the trees are looking then. So thank you once again.
I've got more to say about Cumberland Gardens, so we can do it any time you've got a slot to fill.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Thank you. Okay, the last speaker today, Alviar Cohen. Alviar, are you still out there?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, good morning. Sorry to keep you waiting. Thank you for your patience. It's really good of you to come on the call today at pretty short notice. Now, I hardly know where to start with this heartwarming story. So can I start with just telling you, in case people don't know who you are, this is the guy that's raised a staggering sum of money to pay for his medical treatment, which is wonderful, and it's gone viral, it's gone global, I think. So it's a wonderful story. We just wanted to catch up on a little bit of it. So first of all, Alviar, can you tell us all how you are and how you're keeping at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment, health-wise, I'm pretty good. I feel good. I feel quite fine. I feel healthy and happy.
Excellent. That's what we want to hear. Would you mind telling us a little bit about the condition you have and how it came to light? You know, how did you first know about it, if that question makes any sense?
So I've got leukemia, which is cancer of the bone marrow, and so that's just, and I guess I first knew something was wrong when I just felt really tired all the time, and then suddenly I couldn't keep food down and I just kept throwing up and I just felt really ill.
And when was this, roughly? This is going back a while.
This is August 2017 when I was diagnosed. So,
okay.
But I first started showing symptoms in mid-July.
Okay. And how did you find out about, so can you tell us a little bit about the different treatments available, and I guess leading on to, how did you find out about the treatment that you actually need? Where did you get that information from? Because presumably at first they were wondering, you know, how to tackle the problem, if you see what I mean.
So in children, leukemia is quite a common cancer. So because I was 15 when I was diagnosed, I was still a child. Sorry, what was the question again? It just completely went over my head.
Oh, sorry. This is probably my fault.
Sorry.
I was wondering how you knew about what treatment that you wanted.
Oh yeah, so the treatment is quite it's quite well defined already in the NHS. So there's already like a set system or like a regime, I suppose. So there's like a set treatment that you go through, and that includes chemotherapy at at certain doses, and sometimes it can require radiotherapy. And then if that doesn't work, then you sometimes get a bone marrow transplant if they think you're suitable for one, if they think there's a chance for a cure. And then if that doesn't work, you kind of just look for other options to see what might be possible. And that's what I was doing. I was just on maintenance treatment to kind of keep me as healthy as possible for as long as possible while we tried to keep the cancer at bay, because there wasn't any chance of a cure at the time.
Okay. So how did you find out about the treatment that you're going for, which we'll talk about in a minute? Were you sort of, was it you Googling yourself, or did you have sort of a team of people investigating around the world? How did you come across it?
So it was my doctor that first told me about it during one of our clinic appointments. And she mentioned it, that there was this treatment that could be worth looking into. And obviously only 3 other people had had this treatment before in the world, so it was really
in
new.
the world? Wow.
Yeah, the 3 people in the world other than me. I'm going to be the 4th person
Wow.
receiving this treatment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell us what the treatment, without going into too much detail, what the treatment actually is?
So it's a CAR T treatment, and basically what they do is they're going to harvest some of my immune cells, and then they're going to genetically modify them so that they can target and kill my cancer cells, and then inject them back into my body, and then those genetically modified cells are hopefully going to wither around my body, in my blood, and kill all the cancer cells.
Fantastic. And this is all in Singapore, am I right?
Yeah, so I'm going to be flying over to Singapore as soon as the visa application is done.
Okay. So let's just come on to, let's wrap up by talking about the fundraising, which is extraordinary. And it's for me, and I'm sure many other people, it was a wonderful story and speaks volumes to people's generosity. So can you tell us how that all began? I mean, I remember seeing myself the sort of a post you put on Facebook, but how did it all start, and where have we got to?
So after we were told about the treatment by the doctor, we were told about the treatment, and then we made a draft of the GoFundMe page. And it was just a draft. It was just like a test to see what the page would look like. And then we sent it to a couple of friends to see their opinion of it, and they must have sent it, and then it spread from there. And it started spreading so quickly, we needed to quickly make a proper page because it was a draft.
Yeah.
So we needed to quickly write one up. So it was quite stressful, actually. But the way the money came in